probably already covered this, but I just want to review what happened to these. These were the 4 people most involved with our escape. Dr. Sigurd Huss, our family physician, and of course physician to many people, who was the one that made the arrangement, along with Ola Olson, for us to escape. Dr. Sigurd Huss was captured by the Germans, and he was interrogated. What's the term they use in Guantanamo?
Enhanced
interrogation. And Ola Olson also was interrogated with enhanced interrogation. Well, Sigurd Huss died from the interrogation. Ola Olson did not die from it, but part of the enhanced interrogation was, and this is after months of no cooperation, Ola Olson, we have captured your son. We have captured your son. We will kill your son unless you cooperate with us and answer some questions. And Ola Olson said, kill me, not my son, but I will tell you nothing. That's what he said. Nils Nessa was a 20-year-old boy, a young man, who was a crew member of the Siglaus. And when our boat was attacked on a German fighter plane, less than 14 hours after we left the west coast of Norway on the way to the Shetland Islands, we were attacked by one German fighter plane who strafed our boat 3 times. And he was the only one who was hit, but it killed him. Now the boat was badly damaged, and there was a storm. So water came in on the boat the entire rest of the way. Water came in from damage done on the deck and on the cabins. And my mother had a very tough time with that. You know, she had 3 boys, and she thought that was going to be it. And she said that after that attack, not one person said a word until the ship made it to the Shetland Islands. Not one. They had a dead man on the boat. They had injuries on the boat. They had water coming in on the boat. They did have a bilge pump, which was working the whole time. But it did make it to the Shetland Islands and sank at the dock. Okay, but it made it. However, they were able to pull that ship out again, and they were able to repair it, and it continued to work throughout the war. So if you do get to unless they keep on changing the scenario, when I was at the Televod Museum, Resistance Museum a couple of years ago, they had a full account of that, which I also had from my own, family. But that was in there as well. But I wish my mother would have known that, but she died in '76, so she didn't know about the museum in Televod. Okay, now we're now in Minnesota. This is St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. My older brother was a good student, and he qualified to go to St. Olaf College. So one day he called, and to the amazement of my parents, he said, Ola Olson has been invited to give a talk at our college.
Well, they didn't kill him?
No, he survived the war. Badly, but he survived the war. So this is now in the 1950s. War is over. The war is over. Norway is getting back in good form. The war is over. And Roy calls Mom and Dad and says, Ola Olson, who had won a gold medal given by the King of Norway for his effort during the resistance, Ola Olson is going to give a talk at St. Olaf College. An amazing thing. Amazing thing. So, this is not perfect, but the man, second from the left, Ola Olson. To the far left is my father, Leif Terdal, and next to Ola Olson is my mother, Harriet, and then Edward, the good-looking guy, Edward. And then I'm next to Edward, and then the second from this woman here is my brother Roy, who died a few years ago. But that's Ola Olson. Now, we spent about a weekend with Ola Olson, And it's kind of touching, but he has not been able to smile since the war. He saw too much. He saw too much. Too many people were lost that he knew well. So he's able to give talks, does that, lived the rest of his life. But that's one of my memories of Mr. Olson. There he is again, old Olson, with my brother Roy, who died, like I said a few years ago, my father. A remarkable person.
He was a member of the Storting at that time.
Yes, he was. He was a member of the Storting, the Norwegian Parliament. Now, when Roy was at St. Olaf, especially after Ola Olson gives this talk and has a big dinner, Roy talks in history class about how the Christians helped the Jews in World War II. And the teacher says, yes, that was true in Norway, and it was true in Norway, and it was true in Denmark. And frankly, even though Sweden was neutral, Sweden did its part also. They did help. But the teacher said, throughout Europe, Christians collaborated with the Nazis. Long before World War II. They were anti-Semitic, and the Nazis built on it. Roy was so taken back by that, and when he read up on it, thought it couldn't be true. He took a year out of college to read up on that part of it before going back. He was stunned by it. Anyway, so Roy learned about, and I've learned a lot about this too, participation of anti-Semitism action by Christians, and a 1,000-year tradition of anti-Semitism by the church, and so forth and so on. One outcome was the first pogrom against Jews in Europe came at the time of the First Crusade. Spain in 1492 ordered all Jews and Muslims to leave Spain or convert. And they meant it. And many of the Jews, something like 50,000 Jews went to Eastern Europe, but some went down to Portugal. And 3 or 4 years later, Portugal had the same rule. You must convert to being a Christian, or you will face death or leave. And when you leave all your property back. And that was true in Spain as well. So that's it. Then Martin Luther. I, from time to time, but altogether many times, will ask a Protestant clergyman, friends of mine, our own pastors, when you were in seminary, you certainly studied Martin Luther. Did you study the anti-Semitism material written by Martin Luther? No. Now they could, but it's not part of the curriculum, and I really think that's a mistake. I really believe that's a mistake. One of the most famous pamphlets was on the Jews and their lies. He called for the synagogues to be burned throughout Europe. He called for their books to be burned and for the Jews to be driven out. Kristallnacht, that we talked about in 1938, was scheduled to be and was carried out to commemorate the birthday of Martin Luther. And it was. It's a bad story. It's a sad story.